Welcome to the SEI Podcast Series, a production of the Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute. The SEI is a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. A transcript of today's podcast is posted on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts.
Every 11 seconds, a ransomware attack happens. This cripples businesses, delays critical healthcare procedures, and threatens national security. In January of 2024, in a congressional hearing, the FBI emphasized that China is actively exploiting security weaknesses in our systems, and these systems operate our nation's most critical infrastructure. This is a sobering opening of a new paper from AFCEA's International Cyber Committee, authored by today's guest, Greg Touhill. Welcome to the SEI Podcast Series, a production of Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute. My name is Matthew Butkovic. I'm the Technical Director of Cyber Risk and Resilience in the CERT Division of the Software Engineering Institute. Today I'm joined by Greg Touhill. Greg is well known to our audience. Thank you, Greg, for joining us today.
Thanks, Matt.
So, Greg, your paper starts with, as described here, a very sobering reminder that we are besieged on all fronts in cyber by things that can cause profound disruption and have a detrimental effect on national prosperity and national defense. First question, why did you decide to write this paper now?
Well, first of all, it was not just me. I am a co-author. Our lead author was John Gilligan, who is the CEO of the Center for Internet Security and chair of the Software Engineering Institute's Board of Visitors. But John gathered several of us from the Cyber Committee to take a look at what are some of the foundational elements that expose the nation to risk in the cyber domain. And ultimately, it's not just ransomware. Ransomware attacks are pointing towards some of the systemic vulnerabilities that we have in our cyber ecosystem. And it's an ecosystem that our national security relies on, as well as our economic prosperity. So we took a very critical analysis trying to find out what are some of the common things that are creating some of those vulnerabilities that cyber actors that range from nation-state actors to malicious actors in cyber criminal groups, or just folks who are careless, negligent, indifferent, or overtaxed, may misconfigure or not properly operate. Taking a look at that and drilling down, it ultimately got to the point where we were taking a look at systemic risk, and systemic risk is adversely affected because security is not being baked in from the start in our systems. And our systems are comprised of hardware, software, and the human element, which I like to call wetware. And that is not referred to in the article that we co-authored. But as we take a look at our national security and our national prosperity relies on a safe, secure, and trusted cyber ecosystem. And secure by design is an underpinning for every activity involving national security and national prosperity.
So there's a one-to-many relationship. If we do secure design and we produce secure code and secure systems, we can mitigate the risk that we've enumerated here.
Right. We believe that we can buy down that risk,
right,
and it's an investment worth making because of the potential harmful consequences of systems, software that is not secure by design.
Yeah, and I think some of the audience may say, well, you're still going to have unforeseen circumstances like 0 days or some other flaw that's noted. And I think it's important for the audience to know that the paper suggests, and we believe here at the SEI, that we should be secure by design, but also manage those things that are beyond the scope of the design phase. So you're going to have operational implications and issues that need to be addressed that are post the deployment of the software.
Yes, and it's not just software. It's the entire ecosystem, the system of the systems that we put together in these very exquisitely complex systems and organisms that we are creating. It's taking a look at that supply chain. It's taking a look at the training of the individuals. And as you take a look at some of the work that's already been done, and Software Engineering Institute was and has been a pioneer in secure by design. Matter of fact, this morning I looked up some of the birthright documents that go all the way back to 1988, and I was drawn to the 2009 secure design principles and plans that were published by the Software Engineering Institute. And I remember them very clearly because in 1988 I was a captain in the Air Force leveraging products from the SEI as we were building out some national security capabilities. And as you take a look at some of the stuff that we called out in the paper, we specifically applauded some of the work that CISA was doing in taking the work that had previously been done and amplifying it.
Yeah, Greg, may I ask a question about? Yeah. So I know we had then Director Jen Easterly here in February of 2023 launching an initiative focused on secure by design. Would you maybe explore for us the origin of that and then our role in that effort?
Well, sure. I think it was very deliberate that Jen picked Carnegie Mellon and the Software Engineering Institute in particular to launch that Secure by Design campaign. And a lot of that was because of the pioneering work that had been done by the Software Engineering Institute and not only creating that Secure by Design area of discipline within the software engineering discipline, but also because of the innovative research that had been going on, taking a look at the hardware, the software, the human element, the wetware, all coming together, a systemic approach to dealing with secure by design. And in the aftermath of that kickoff in February of 23, we saw the CISA had put out the Secure by Design campaign. And what was really great about that campaign was it wasn't just in the United States. Jen and the folks at CISA roped in a lot of our friends that are out there. So the Five Eyes, I think there was 14 different countries or major international entities that all signed up in that Secure by Design pledge and campaign. But that campaign focused on three principles. And I'm going to list down because I wrote them down. Take ownership of customer security outcomes. When you're building out a product or a service, ultimately you're giving something to somebody. You're helping them to be more secure, more effective, more efficient. We need folks that are creating products and services to really embrace seriously their responsibilities to make those outcomes for their customers, secure by design. Second is embrace radical transparency and accountability. I thought it trite at first to see the radical transparency, but really I think in reflection it's apropos because a lot of folks aren't necessarily transparent and feeling like they're accountable. As you go to market, you are trying to guard your competitive advantage. So you're not as transparent because you don't want to give up your secret sauce. And on the same token, if you take a look at the volumes of pages of product vendor disclaimers, as part of the user licensing agreements, you almost have to be a lawyer and have a couple of hours on your hands just to comb through those user licensing agreements. So the challenge that CISA put forward in that discussion was really be transparent in how you build things. If you find a vulnerability, have a vulnerability disclosure program. Subscribe to the Common Vulnerability Enumeration in the CVE process that's out there. And then that last one from CISA, build organizational structures and leadership to achieve the goals of Secure by Design. It starts with leadership at the top. it's not going to necessarily bubble up from the bottom. We went through 30 years of trying to bubble up from the designers up, and it's not been working. So we really need to focus on, as part of the campaign, from the leadership on down. And when you take that leadership, transparency, outcomes, focus on the customer and the customer outcomes, it's a really great start with that campaign. But from the AFCEA Cyber Committee standpoint, we said it's not enough. And we teed up several different things that we think are very critical for that next step in the Secure by Design campaign that arguably, I think, was kicked off by the Software Engineering Institute, has been amplified under the great leadership of CISA and Jen Easterly. And now the AFCEA Cyber Committee, we want to take it to the next generation in concert with CISA, SEI, and other organizations.
So there's a chronology here, building on work arguably pioneered here at the SEI, made more contemporary more recently by CISA, and then additional thoughts and additional points of access for folks in the AFCEA report. A question, Greg, before we get to the recommendations in the AFCEA report. It seems to me that in this ecosystem of people, and we should say it's not just software, it's systems. Let's say systems, or systems of systems. You can be a creator of those things, or an acquirer of those things, or a combination thereof. And I was hoping
you can be both simultaneous.
You can be both, right? Exactly. So it's important for the audience to know that just because you're not developing code, it doesn't mean you're not part of the solution here.
That's right, and that's one of the key attributes of the recommendations we had in the AFCEA paper. And that's because we took a look critically at where we stood in that Secure by Design campaign. And we found three missing elements that we thought needed to be shored up. One was there were no discrete measures. How do you measure that you're doing well enough? Two, prioritization of best practices. There's really no standard that works for everybody, because each business, each organization is going to have different priorities. And there's a lot of different best practices depending on the type of environment in which you're operating, the type of mission you have. And then the third challenge is appropriate motivation. Stick and carrots, is it regulation? Is it, going to be connection approval? Those type of things. So we basically, as a result of our studies, which took a couple of months, and our team of authors were representing different industries, different experience bases and such, we came up with what we believe are 6 common solution set attributes, things that a great solution will take into account. And the first is congruent with the CISA approach by organizational culture. I think it's really important that leadership embraces the fact that we need to have that culture within our organization of building in security from the start. Security for our own infrastructure, but also security that protects our customers, our partners that we have business-to-business relationships with. Organizational culture is at the top of the list. 2 is need to make sure that we have a formal process for identifying and prioritizing the risks, but having a comprehensive understanding of the contemporary threat environment. And the companies that are really doing a great job, and the government agencies that are doing a really great job at doing this, are thinking forward too. It's not only today's risk and threat environment, where are we going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Because you don't want to skate to where the puck is, as Gretzky would say. You want to skate to where the puck is going to be. The third is you want to have a software development environment that's pretty standardized. If I'm going to put together a software package that's going to be employed on this type of environment, I want to develop on that type of environment. I want to have that development environment where I can test it ahead of time. I don't want to just throw it over the fence to the customer and say, good luck with that. So having that discipline and that type of approach was pioneered here at the Software Engineering Institute. Test, dev, all of those should have congruency. We also want to make sure that folks that are developing these systems are employing a robust set of automated tools, because with the complexity of the environments that we have and the advent of new technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning systems, you need to have that robust set of automated tools that serve as a digital wingman for the folks that are building out the systems, but also properly installing, operating, configuring, and maintaining them. 4 is you need to manage by metrics. You have to establish some metrics. If you're a requirements developer, you should be thinking about, how do I measure success? If you're going to put out a statement of work or a request for a proposal, you should be clearly identifying what things you're trying to achieve. But if you're going to manage well, you have to have objectives, key results, and measures of merit. And then finally, and this gets into what we previously discussed, you need to be able to mitigate the risks of external software dependencies, because we reuse code all the time. And a lot of organizations don't necessarily know where all those elements of their code comes from. Having that software bill of materials is important as part of a secure by design methodology and employment of secure by design. But you never know exactly where that code comes from unless you have that formal process that I mentioned up front, and that organizational culture that says this is important for the integrity of the products that and services we're providing, and in protecting the outcomes for our customers.
Yeah, Greg, thank you for enumerating the recommendations, and great advice there. I think it's interesting to note that the conclusion is this is not a technical problem. It is a problem or a challenge that's predicated on establishing the right philosophy and tone at the top, and then setting expectations and a system of measures to show progress, which dovetails to the majority of the work that we've done at the SEI over the years. We've always advocated for taking a broad-based approach, having a system of measures, and being evidence-based. Thoughts about how the SEI can play a role, maybe a more prominent role, in specifically bringing about a greater focus on secure by design.
Well, thank you on that. I'm going to itch here. Pollen's up.
It's please.
As you take a look at some of the different elements in that solution set, we've already identified a lot of the different capabilities in here. First, though, as folks are taking a look in industry, if I'm going to be using robust automated tools, how do you assess which one's the right one? One of the great lessons I learned during my military career is, being able to ask for help. And many people in our culture today think that asking for help is a sign of weakness. I think it's a sign of wisdom. You can come to the Software Engineering Institute and ask for help. We do work in conjunction with industry all the time, and sometimes folks will come to us and say, hey, could you do an applied research and development project for us to, take a look at how we are doing things? Government agencies can come to us and say, can you evaluate these types of products or services? That's part of our charter. That's part of our writ. And we've been doing that since 1984 for government and military entities. But as you take a look at some of the really challenging gaps that the AFCEA Cyber Committee articulated, defining measurements and how do you do metrics. We've got a rich background on evaluating software performance measures and software engineering principles and measuring software and architecture. So that's an SEI sweet spot. As you take a look at prioritization of best practices, we've been a repository for best practices, which continue to evolve on a daily basis. Hence, the best practices get better over time. So we have that rich network of over 3,400 different companies and organizations that are constantly sharing with us, as well as our work with the foundational researchers on campus, identifying some of the new pioneering efforts. And then when it comes to that last part of the appropriate motivation, I think what's really important is SEI is just part of the broader Carnegie Mellon community, and we work very closely with the other colleges on campus. And that linkage between foundational research and the applied research that we do, when it comes to the appropriate motivation, our links with the Heinz College on campus, the Tepper School of Business, the Institute of, the network I&I folks, the Carnegie Mellon Institute on Science and Technology. We've been working in an interdisciplinary best practices to take a look at how do you fuse the technology with things like the leadership, the business aspects. How do you get economy of scale for the different solution sets that we put out in the AFCEA paper? How do you make sure that something is feasible, acceptable, suitable, and affordable? That's where you talk about risk and resilience, and that's the directorate you lead.
It is indeed, Greg.
And I look to you as a functional leader and that of your team to help deliver those type of solutions and services and best practices for our friends in government, military, industry, and even academia.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Let's spend just a moment talking about emerging tech, future tech. Front of mind for everyone is artificial intelligence. On the near horizon, depending on your perspective, or maybe somewhat more distant in the future, is quantum. But let's talk about AI for just a minute.
Sure.
I think it's important, and I'll offer this premise. I think it's important to understand that the rise of AI, as it's often said, or the automation of code development, which is becoming a reality, doesn't obviate the need to focus on secure by design. That, in fact, I would argue, you described it exquisitely complicated systems. Those systems are going to be even more complicated as we layer in new tech. So thoughts about how we can take the things that we know are fundamental and foundational and apply them in this new context, right? It seems to me the worst course of action is to start with a blank sheet of paper. The better course of action is to start with things that we've built over these 40 years in software engineering and cyber.
Well, we have a lot of challenges in that area, and if we want to raise the bar for cybersecurity in an AI-enabled world, we have to realize that there's an AI in raise. So I think it's really important that as a community of interest, we do a couple of things. First of all, we need to have cybersecurity for AI, and following that Secure by Design campaign, those companies that are involved in developing AI-enabled technologies, they should be embracing that Secure by Design pledge, and they should be asking for help on how to properly employ that within their companies. Our research indicates that many of the programmers that are involved in creating some of these capabilities are just absolutely brilliant people, but they don't necessarily always come from that computer science or software engineering background. They can come from many different disciplines and fuse those different disciplines together and creating some amazing capabilities. But if they're not building in those Secure by Design principles, those solutions that I've outlined in partnership with my co-writers in the AFCEA paper, then we are introducing new risks that are going to be more difficult to identify and manage until they're manifest. So I think there's some great opportunities there for us to raise the bar with cyber for AI, but I also see even greater opportunities for creating AI tools for cybersecurity.
Certainly.
And for those companies that are looking to create AI tools for cybersecurity, it becomes even more important to embrace secure by design principles, because if my tool that I'm using for cybersecurity activities like threat detection, mitigation, automated code repair, those type of things, if that's not secure by design, I could be introducing even greater damage into systems and greater risks. And then the final thing, and there's plenty of things I could talk about on this. The final thing I think is accountability. As we continue to field capabilities that are out there, I think there's going to be a very fulsome conversation over the next couple of years as to what type of liabilities are these companies that are fielding capabilities going to have. As we take a look at privacy, civil rights, civil liberties, AI is now slurping up all sorts of data and is able to cogitate on and compute all these different data sources, and privacy, as we know it, may be gone.
Yeah.
So we need to have whole new looks at accountability, privacy, and other things that could cause hidden liabilities for those companies if they don't follow secure by design principles. So I think there's going to be some motivations there, but that future is a little cloudy right now, but I think we as a community can help sharpen the focus on that.
Thanks, Greg. As an FFRD sponsored by the Department of Defense, as someone that had a very long, distinguished career in the military, in the U.S. Air Force, a question about transition, which is such an important element of our role here. Is there anything unique to the military context in relation to secure by design you'd like to highlight?
I don't necessarily think it is unique. One of the misconceptions I think a lot of folks have about the military is it's highly regimented and it's different. No, not really. I went to parochial school. I was in Boy Scouts. I joined the Air Force and the military to lighten up a bit. I think as you take a look at what's common is better than what's different. And that's really where the strength is it doesn't matter if you're in a military setting or a government setting or a business setting or even in a nonprofit or academic setting. These secure by design principles are uniform and can be applied everywhere. And they can be applied in my business life, in my military life, in my home life as well. So I think it's really important as we go forward with secure by design, we don't leave it at the office. We take it home as well when we're making decisions about what we're going to buy, how we're going to operate, how we're going to protect our critical information, how we're going to guard our privacy, how we're going to interact as part of the cyber ecosystem. So yes, most folks would say, oh, well, military, there's going to be something unique there. No, I think it all is embraced under that secure by design umbrella. And from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you should be thinking, what do I need to do to make sure that my vital information, my data is secured? And the systems that I'm using to ingest, digest, and share that data are secure by design.
Well, those are great insights, Greg. And the old adage that safety doesn't happen by accident also applies here, which is we have to be deliberate in the choices we make. And I really like what you said about this commonality, that in all of those contexts and endeavors, we should aspire to have the same fundamental principles applied.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter on the type of device either. It could be in your data center. If you're an AI provider and you're running these huge mega data centers, all the way down to your mobile device or your wearable or your industrial control system, your pumps, valves, switches, programmable logic controllers. The secure by design principles and the solutions that we propose supplement the great work that CISA has led, that the SEI launched. All of that is congruent and can be employed across any device, anywhere, any aspect, any system, home, office, whatever.
Greg, I want to thank you for taking the time today to talk about this really important topic, and I would encourage the audience to locate a copy of the AFCEA report because it is just a treasure trove of information about this topic.
Yeah, and if you want more, folks can go to the SEI webpage at sei.cmu.edu and just type Secure by Design. We actually have a blog post that talks about my role in that paper, but it also gives a link to the AFCEA.org website that shows you clearly within the AFCEA website where that paper is located at. But we have I looked, we have about 25 plus pages of Secure by Design work that goes all the way back to 1988.
That's a great point. So there's a catalog of Secure by Design artifacts on the SEI website. Always a good idea to visit that, and certainly to then take the time to review the AFCEA publication, which is a really important piece of advice in the space.
Absolutely.
Well, for the audience, we'll include links to the things we described, such as the AFCEA paper and the catalog of Secure by Design artifacts here at the SEI. Finally, a reminder to our audience that our podcasts are available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and the SEI's YouTube channel. If you like what you see and hear today, please give us a thumbs up. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. This episode is available where you download podcasts, including SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and Apple Podcasts. It is also available on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts and the SEI's YouTube channel. This copyrighted work is made available through the Software Engineering Institute, a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. For more information about the SEI and this work, please visit www.sei.cmu.edu. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at info@sei.cmu.edu. Thank you.